Hello everyone, Litrostorm here. Today I'm going to cover the second half of Total Drama World Tour with 2 teams. If you haven't already seen the first half, then make sure you check it out using the link in the description or comment section. But for those of you who are caught up, let's go ahead and get into the video now. It's time for our teams to go to Sweden. I feel like Lindsay would definitely hold Alejandro and Duncan back in the boat building challenge, causing them to have a messed up boat. However, Duncan wouldn't learn not to trust Alejandro since Owen and Noah never talked about that. Owen also wouldn't cause all the ice to crack since he's not holding in farts because he isn't worried about Alejandro. He's not even on the same team as the guy. Al would offer up the captain spot to Lindsay to try and keep her head in the game, and she is totally cool with that because she actually enjoyed leading her team in Total Drama action. Ezekiel steals the captain helmet for Team Amazon, and the team is too afraid and weirded out by him to really stop him. So basically, he's the captain now. Without Owen to launch at Team Amazon, Team Victory would lose once more, but it's a reward challenge, and in the next episode, Blanley gets a reward by getting thrown back into Total Drama. Means we've got 9 people at the merge instead of 8, but there are enough episodes where we can cut enough people. So, with the teams merged, Chris decides to pair everyone up using the random wheel. Now, since they have an extra guy, I'm just gonna say Chris brought a female bear instead of a male bear. That way, we can pair one of the guys with her. So we'd probably have the guys spinning instead of the girls here. I'm gonna keep as many canon couples intact as possible, as there are still some here. So we've still got Cody and Sierra, Duncan and Courtney, and Owen and Blanley. This leaves Lindsay, Ezekiel, and Alejandro, so one of them has to get a bear. Now, while it would be funny to put Ezekiel with a bear, I think we get more character interactions if we put him with Lindsay. It's more interesting to have him actually interact with the others than to shove him off to the side. Usually he never makes it this far. So Ezekiel gets Lindsay, which he's kinda down with, and Lindsay's a little weirded out, but I'm sure she'd find him to not be all that bad. This leaves Alejandro with a bear, whom he's able to woo like the other animals. This allows him to win the challenge pretty easily, and assist Courtney as well. Due to Ezekiel's slowly fading English and Lindsay's stupidity, they'd be completely failing. Chris would announce the challenge is about to end, and Sierra would start dashing toward her dress. This, combined with Ezekiel realizing they're going to be disqualified, forces him to muster up all his fortitude and say the directions Lindsay needs to go. Everyone is shocked that he can still speak, and the two narrowly escape their L. Lindsay is really happy that he was able to help them win, and so she probably gives him a hug or something, which makes Ezekiel feel really wanted. The next part of the challenge would go pretty similarly, but I think Ezekiel being kinda feral would definitely help him whilst carrying Lindsay. He'd probably pull out some crazy running skills, jumping over the other contestants, and gaining immunity for both him and Lindsay. It'd be close between Duncan and Courtney, but I think Ezekiel has it here. So, who gets voted off? Well, it's kinda similar to in canon. Alejandro still gets Duncan and Sierra to vote off Owen, but I think Ezekiel would sense something is off about Alejandro. I mean, he's been on the plane watching this whole time whilst being eliminated, so he would definitely notice Al trying to talk to Lindsay, but would probably pull her back to first class and not let Al talk to her. Lindsay is Ezekiel's first real friend in the series, so he doesn't want her being played by Al. And yes, Ezekiel is kinda nuts, but we saw in the London episode that he can be very strategic because of his newfound skills. So I think he's still at that stage. And of course, befriending Lindsay has only helped him to be more human. Courtney votes for Duncan, Ezekiel votes for Al, Lindsay and Owen's votes really don't matter unless they vote for Sierra or Owen, as I think the two would have the most votes, but I don't think Chris would boot them both yet, so we'd have another tiebreaker challenge. We can make it like a questionnaire type thing, since Chef had to ask questions earlier in the episode, and obviously Sierra would crush Owen at this, causing him to be kicked out, literally by Alejandro. In the Chinese race, Lindsay would be left with the weird sandals Heather wore and likely wouldn't make it to the finish by the time Chris rings the gong. Ezekiel wouldn't need a ride as he's got the speed of his feet. As for the eating contest, Ezekiel might be pretty good at it and make it past the first round. I'd even wager to say he makes it to the final round, but because Sierra gets Blanley's ice cream, she'd still win and get immunity. Now, as for the elimination, we've got pretty much the same votes. Cody wastes his on Sierra despite her being immune, and Ezekiel would vote for Alejandro again. This leaves us with a 3-3 on Courtney and Blanley, so Chris boots them both due to the producers pressuring him. Now, with Ezekiel being part of the cast, he wouldn't be what the gang are hunting in the next episode. Well, kind of. I think it would be really likely that Chris makes them hunt each other. The last one to be paralyzed with the trank ball wins immunity. Ezekiel would fail at getting his gourd open, so he'd only get 1 trank ball. Lindsay might also only get 1 here. Duncan and Al still team up, while Sierra plays for both her and Cody, and of course, Lindsay and Ezekiel team up as well. So we've got 3 partnered teams. Sierra would be on the hunt, finding Lindsay and Ezekiel roaming. She takes a shot at Lindsay, but Ezekiel senses it and saves her from it. He then gets up as Sierra tries to prepare the last tranq ball. Zeke points at Sierra and Lindsay goes to shoot, but messes up and hits herself. After that, Ezekiel is able to escape and Sierra chases after. That leads to Duncan and Alejandro tagging Cody and Sierra with their balls. Jeez. Anyway, Cody and Sierra are knocked out, so Alejandro and Duncan continue their teamwork to try and hunt Zeke. We'd get to see them working together more rather than Al trying to manipulate Duncan. They need each other if they're going to beat this guy. So they work together, but I think Duncan would get taken out, either by Zeke or with Zeke by Al in one hit. Either way, Alejandro takes down Ezekiel and wins immunity by being the last one standing. For the voting, we've got some changes due to Heather not being here, and Alejandro having different ideas on who's a threat. See, he saw Duncan as the biggest threat in this episode, but you have to remember that Ezekiel was able to take out the entire cast back in London. And he's been really good in challenges lately. Plus, he's caught on to Al's schemes and is probably gunning for him. So, Al decides to take action on Ezekiel first. He convinces Duncan pretty easily, as it means Al isn't voting him off, so why would Duncan deny that? I do think Sierra holds enough of a grudge against Duncan to vote him off still. He hurt Cody and cheated on Courtney, so she doesn't like him that much. Due to Ezekiel not being able to vote for Al, since he's got that invincibility, he votes for Duncan as well. As for Lindsay, she would probably also vote for Duncan here because who else would she vote for? And this means Alejandro's plan fails and Duncan is voted off just like in the original. This is not good for Al, as now he's alone against Ezekiel. Or is he? Well, due to his victory, he is allowed to bring one person into first class with him. While he did bring Cody canonically, it was only because there were no other options to take out Heather. Well, besides Sierra, but yeah. Though, things are a bit different this time. Lindsay has been loyal to him since the beginning, but her bond with Ezekiel is growing more each day. He's got to find some way to turn her against him. It's his only hope at stopping them from targeting him eventually. Sierra would likely vote off Ezekiel anyway if Alejandro wasn't the choice. So all he needs to do is win immunity and make sure Lindsay votes for Ezekiel, and it'll be wraps for him. So Al spends the night in first class with Lindsay and returns to his usual flirting and whatnot. However, he has lost quite a bit of his charm due to her remembering Tyler. Not to mention, Zeke has been influencing her. But based on her still repping Al in the last few episodes, I'd assume she still likes him to some degree. And if he can convince her that he cared for Tyler a lot, maybe he could pull her back around. Anyway, we've now got a pretty different Final 5, so things could get interesting in these last few episodes. In the next one, the gang travels to Easter Island, where they have to find colored condor eggs. Alejandro giving Lindsay the candy he won wouldn't be all that effective, but it is still appreciated. The basket is useful for the challenge, and Lindsay does like that he's being nice and helping her. Ezekiel tries to warn Lindsay, but she tells him that she can be friends with both of them. Alejandro then walks up to one of Lindsay's eggs, handing it to her, which ticks Ezekiel off. He runs to go find his own eggs to try and win the challenge. Lindsay is able to gather her eggs quickly due to Al and Zeke helping her out. I imagine Ezekiel would find the eggs before Alejandro though, causing Al to have to catch up with him. And due to Ezekiel's quick thinking and instincts, he and Lindsay would dodge the boulder, causing Alejandro to have an egg or two crushed. He has no basket to hold them in, so he's much more vulnerable. Al then has to run back, causing him to fall behind greatly. He narrowly escapes the condor, but is now the middle person to make it back. So we'd get a weird order in the condor song: Ezekiel, Lindsay, Alejandro, Cody, and lastly Sierra. Ezekiel would definitely not be welcomed by the mother condor and would not win. Lindsay might fail, but she's got the basket, so she'd get a second try. Alejandro would get pecked by the condor, but he didn't win the mask, so he'd be dropped earlier from that. Sierra and Cody both fail still too. This leaves Lindsay as the only one with any eggs left, so if she can return them, she wins. Ezekiel offers her the mask he won since he's out, and she takes it. Cody too isn't attracted to Heather this time since she's not here, so it'd probably be Lindsay instead. He hops onto her hair, and the condor flies off with him, allowing Lindsay to win the challenge and invincibility. The votes end up kinda split, but luckily it was just a reward challenge. Don't worry, we're still gonna have time to cut the extra characters off, just wait. For now, Lindsay and Ezekiel enjoy first class together. Even though he's not in first class, I think Al can Photoshop the image of Cody and Sierra since the computer was in a different part of the plane. The only real option is to make it look like Cody was sleeping next to Lindsay. This would make Sierra mad and have her act out against Lindsay, causing her to not like Sierra either. Then if Al and Cody vote for Sierra, she's gone. After that, he can use Cody's loyalty to help him further. This basically plays out as you'd expect, and the cast make their dinosaurs in Alberta. I think the dinosaur Sierra makes would still get the most votes, with Cody or Lindsay being second. So I'd give Sierra the drill, Lindsay or Cody the pick or pail and shovel, with Ezekiel and Al nothing. Sierra still wins the challenge, and Al would probably end up saving Lindsay from being wedged in a hole. Not sure what the song would be like there, but it's probably not as cool. All the votes come in, or they would if Sierra didn't accidentally blow up the plane, which she still does here. She is eliminated by Chris himself, who then leaves in a helicopter. The remaining 4 now have to find their way to Hawaii somehow, and the last 2 to show up get the boot. The final Aftermath challenge would have 4 teams since there are 4 players. Ezekiel would likely only have Blanley on his team since no one really likes him. Owen would be forced to surf with the injured Blanley, Tyler would surf for Lindsay, and Harold and Courtney would still surf for Cody and Al. Still see Harold winning though, so not much changes besides Tyler getting some more screen time. Anyway, the final 4 begin their travels, with Alejandro sneaking into Chris's animal truck and Cody making the hot air balloon. I imagine Lindsay and Ezekiel would just roam around until they find the train. This causes their paths to converge with Alejandro once he hops on the train as well. We would then see an epic showdown between Al and Zeke as they battle to try and leave each other behind. But Al is able to make use of Ezekiel's bond with Lindsay, making him believe she was going to fall off the train. He then knocks Ezekiel off the train and continues traveling, but Lindsay sees him enter and asks where Ezekiel is. Al lies, saying that he wanted some alone time. The stress of the competition is eating at him. Lindsay feels bad for her friend until Ezekiel eventually returns on a horse, hopping onto the train again. Lindsay realizes that Alejandro lied, and Ezekiel is able to knock him off the train this time since he's not distracted. But Al lands on one of the horses, still trying to keep up. Sierra and Cody's whole firework explosion goes the same, causing them to land in a boat, and Lindsay gets to the other one as well, with Ezekiel hopping into another one. Alejandro arrives last, but due to Lindsay being unable to figure out how to start the boat, he quickly passes her and Ezekiel. So Ezekiel hops into her boat to try and figure it out, and eventually does so. The sword fight between Al and Cody keeps them distracted long enough for Zeke and Lindsay to catch up in their one boat, but because Lindsay is using Heather's original boat, it runs out of fuel after passing them, forcing Ezekiel to push it while swimming. Lindsay also rows the boat to give it an extra push. Alejandro's boat blows up on a mine, and the explosion somewhat hits Lindsay's boat, causing her to be launched forward while Ezekiel is blown back since he's in the water. Al and Cody's boats collide, making them land at the same time, tied with Lindsay. This means Ezekiel is eliminated, and we're down to our final 3. Because Alejandro is basically a one-man show that whole way, I think Chris would allow him the guaranteed spot in the final 2. However, it comes at the cost with him being hit by all the golf balls to decide the next challenge, and he has to get tied up like Heather and risk burning alive, so it's kind of fair. This means Lindsay and Cody have to battle on the raft for who makes it to the final 2. This would be a really cool fight, as both have kind of been carried by other people, so seeing them fight alone for who takes on the main antagonist in the finale is cool. Honestly, I could see this fight going either way. Alejandro could distract Cody by saying Sierra got hurt, or mention that there's a sale on mascara or something. It's really a toss-up. So I'm just gonna say that either one could win, meaning we technically have 3 different winners of the season due to alternate endings. Lindsay won, her helpers would be Tyler and Ezekiel. If Cody won, Sierra really can't help much due to her injuries, so it'd probably be Harold and Ezekiel. But for Al, he's gonna need a new helper as Lindsay is in the final 2. Or even in the ending where Cody's in the final 2 instead of her, she definitely isn't helping him win now because she knows who he is. Maybe Heather could help him since she had a crush on him, but she'll only do it if he gives her some of the money. I don't know. But it would be cool to see Heather and Courtney forced to work together again. Probably wouldn't end too well. The endings would probably go something like this. Alejandro's ending sees him offer to go on a date with Heather before tossing the sacrifice into the lava. Heather can't really betray him since she wants him to win due to their deal. Cody's ending would have Ezekiel attack Alejandro, distracting him long enough for Cody or Lindsay to throw their sacrifice in. I know the helpers didn't do anything at the end of the canon version, but it's the only realistic thing I can think of to give more than one ending. But yeah, that's the end of Total Drama World Tour, but this isn't the end of the what if. Ezekiel is no longer feral, he's just a bit quirky. So that means he wouldn't appear in Revenge of the Island as a crazy dude, which does change some things actually, and also wouldn't try to kill Chris in All-Stars. In fact, Chris had Ezekiel on the plane for All-Stars canonically, meaning he would likely be a competitor. And given the fact that he made 4th place this season despite getting such a bad ranking in the first season, I think that's entirely possible for him to be a competitor in All-Stars. So if this video gets enough hype behind it, as well as the first part, I will definitely make a continuation of the story where we have Ezekiel in All-Stars, and also discuss how Revenge of the Island would change without Ezekiel there. So let me know if you guys liked it, make sure you hit the like button and do everything else. But as always, tell me if you liked this part, tell me what you think will happen next, comment your requests for future videos, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.